It's Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs. Let's start the show with Lewis Tennant. Here we go. The guests and interviews that you're looking for with creators, innovators, and so much more. For all episodes and further info, verbalhighs.com is the place to go.
All right, welcome back, he says, somewhat hopefully, but also with the analytic tools that shows that people are listening to multiple episodes. I love you guys. Thanks so much. And welcome if you're new. This is Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs, a podcast podcasted weekly from a kitchen bench in Kingsland, Auckland, New Zealand, talking to vaguely what I call creators and innovators. We're up to number 11 now, and I'm pretty happy about that. Good feedback, great feedback on Verity. She's someone I didn't know at all compared to other guests. I had some kind of tenuous link with the others, and she agreed to come on in, and it was great fun. And so thanks to her, and thanks to the feedback from some of the listeners about that show. Go back and check out other ones. My guest this week is my first international guest, though he's very much part of the Kiwi music whānau when he comes over. His real name's John Ayres. His stage handle, you may know him as, is Jstar. So as not to pigeonhole him too much, if you've not heard of him, he makes and DJs what we'll broadly call bass music, though very much with a kind of reggae backbone. Started in the mashup game in the early 2000s. We get a little bit boffiny about kind of certain parts of music and DJing at points, but hopefully if you're not from that world, you'll gain some insight into kind of how, why, when, where, and what's going on up there and in the culture, aside from obviously putting on music. I had a lovely weekend in Wellington. I've been lucky enough to get home 2 weeks in less than a month. I went down for the New Zealand Pinball Champs. Shout outs to Steve, another one of many gracious people who invite us into their homes, the finely tuned athletes we are, to battle for New Zealand supremacy. There were 32, you had to be top 32 to get in, and I came out of 32, which wasn't ideal. Then, by fluke, someone got in contact, my dear friend Rissa, and asked if I could come down and play some music, which I don't do so often these days. So I had a gig, not just a gig, a special night at an engagement party up there in Mount Vic. So I just want to say love and congratulations to Rissa and Tor. Met the new fella. He's okay. You're both okay. All good. And had a great night, because I don't really get out and gig much now, but it kind of gives me a little bit of fuel to maybe go and start doing a few more shows every time I do that. I just stopped of my own volition a few years ago as other stuff took over in my life, but I'm well keen on those house parties with people who like good music. Not so keen in having to turn up 3 a.m. in bars these days. What else? Airport screening. I joked about that a few weeks ago about I think I referred to her as a cantankerous old bat who took my podcast mixing desk out of my bag and made me pull out all my stuff. I had a different kind of mixing desk in there this time at the DJ desk, and I had a completely different experience in, I say customs, but it's airport screening because it's local, isn't it? Domestic. So it wasn't owing to the different mixer. It was just owing to getting 2 heaps of nicer dudes as I went through, and one of them said, "What's that?" And they see it up on the X-ray because it's really bright and obvious. And I said, "It's a DJ mixer." And one of them went, "Cool, bro. Busy night tonight?" I was like, "Actually, tomorrow night." And the other guy, a bit older, said, "Got any Pink Floyd?" And the first one said, "This guy, Pink Floyd." And I was through, and it really started off my day well. So, what else? We talked about the pinball comp. Oh, that's right. In this world of, I noticed on Saturday night, and I've noticed in general, that a lot more people are discussing politics and global affairs for the obvious reason. And it can all get a bit doomy and gloomy, but what I'm really liking is I'm having really quite in-depth conversations with people. I'm no world affairs expert, but it's kind of like everyone's schooling up on different bits and pieces and coming together and is aware of fake news and is telling each other the legitimate stuff they've heard and, updating each other on what's happening each crazy day in the States and so on. Because I kind of think, I don't know how this would work practically, but I think that's what it's going to be about, unity from the bottom, better exchange of ideas, perhaps some discussion, that has more, what's the word, traction or agitation or movement globally or in the States or whatever, will start to question perhaps the democratic system and how we got here. Haven't bumped into many Trump supporters, actually. But anyway, the reason I riff on that is I kind of thought after John came over and I had a guest before the other week and the week before, I've been catching up with all these great, inspiring people, all with similar concerns and ways they want the world to be and so on and so forth. And, so it's nice to cut through the noise and just engage with good people. So I leave you with that thought. It's not all doom and gloom. Go and have a coffee with someone nice. Go and watch someone do something creative that makes you feel nice. Remember that, there is a life to lead out there. We need to be concerned. We need to be engaged, but we also need to not lose sight of the good stuff. Well, that was a bit preachy. Not at all. I just thought it was a lovely kind of sentiment that I took away from the weekend. Okay, if you want to go to Jstar's website after this podcast, it's a piece of paper here. Here's one I prepared earlier. jstarmusic.com. Now, this week I've got a wee addendum or clarification or some such, as you might call it. When discussing the album, which is Jstar's new album, I go on a riff about how when I was DJing a lot, there's a whole lot of music that I collect and love that you just can't kind of play out to a crowd for different reasons. And in the case of discussing his album, I suggest it's got this really great kind of heavy reggae steppers sound, which it does. But upon a proper listen after the podcast, I realised that might be selling it a little short, and perhaps he was a little polite, because it definitely goes that way towards the end of the album. But throughout, including that heavier end, there's just lovely, lovely, lovely vocals from a range of artists. More importantly, in terms of this clarification, not just, I guess, what you call a real late-night heavy album for those kind of reggae heads. It's got a bit of everything, folks. I guess the proof's in the pudding. Stand to order. Okay, hit me up, Verbal Highs Podcast on Facebook. If you haven't liked it already, please show your support and like. I post new eps up there every week. And go to the website, verbalhighs.com. That's my own dedicated site. A new ep goes up on Tuesday. I'm also on Twitter at Verbal Highs. And you can and thoroughly encouraged to subscribe on iTunes. You can do that through the site or through iTunes itself. Without further ado, John Ayres, a.k.a. Jstar.
This is Dr. Tannen's Verbal Highs.
Hello. Ooh.
I need to get some internet up on there.
Oh, you don't need it now, though, do you? You can send me that later on, can't you?
Right, do I get headphones?
No, I don't use it normally. I don't normally use them. I just use them for a sound check, and then we just chat. You can wear them if you want throughout the whole thing.
My voice has some compression on it.
Yeah. Well, the compression goes on later. Okay. So just get comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's.
Oh, what's he doing? Do you like it a different way?
Kind of pointing towards my face rather than like an ice cream, but
Just this bit. Yeah.
It's on
Condenser.
cardio.
Condenser, so it's to where the logo is.
Okay, right, got you.
Okay, well, we better get started, eh?
Yes, we get started today.
So you obviously haven't done long-form podcasting before. Do you want to wear the headphones?
No, that's all right then.
Okay, you sure?
Yeah. But I will have a biscuit, so then later on you can hear me eating a biscuit. Yeah.
Well, actually, I once ate a banana on the radio, and someone said to me, "Never fucking do that again."
Yeah.
But these are baked by me, and they are radio friendly because they're not crunchy.
They're not crunchy, and they don't contain too much cannabis.
You can smash all of those. You can smash all of those if you want. So we just blindsided Mike from Pitch Black, trying to take you to a barbecue. We've secured you for, what's this, Royal We? I've secured you for an hour and 20 minutes.
Well, we over at Jstar Towers are very appreciative of the quality time you're putting in.
He knows about theatre of the mind. Actually, I did do a brief bit of research on you. You're kind of incognito online for how much you kind of get about and do stuff. But I did see, man after my own heart, that you studied TV, radio and film back in the day, which is very similar to my undergrad.
I like the way you put that, incognito. It just means I don't have a very efficient agent or any management, which is true in both senses.
You're working, though. I'm going to introduce you. Fuck it, let's throw caution to the wind. Hi. My guests My first overseas guest is a nomadic international DJ, prolific producer and remixer, and former tour manager for Diplo and Major Lazer. Also recently a father. Kia ora. Originally from England, and now, I hope I've got this right, currently residing in Germany. No?
Haere mai, noa mai. Thanks for the manakatanga. Lovely to be here. Stock answers to all of those questions coming up in just a few minutes.
John Ayres?
Yes, so
AKA,
I do kind of
hang
keep
on a
that.
second, AKA Jstar.
AKA Jstar, yeah. Which is depends how many people in the authorities are listening to that right now. Thanks for that, Lewis. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so I want to ask first, what have you been doing in New Zealand? How long have you been over? How's it looking?
Over the last, I've been here for about, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years. No, it feels like that sometimes. I think what's great about coming back is you can feel like you were here yesterday. Every time I come back, you don't get that with all the countries that you travel to. But you come back in and you pop back into people's lives. And, of course, there's always been change. But it feels like it was yesterday. And that's what's a beautiful thing. And you don't get that.
And I've heard that a lot, man. And I was thinking about that today. And I thought you might have that response because I can see how you're looked after. And I've seen it before with other, valued music artists who come to New Zealand. And then I thought, well, that's the only scene I've known. So I don't know if it's general Kiwi hospitality, but I think it's that. But I think it's also it sounds kind of cheesy. It's this country's kind of attachment to kind of bass music and dance music, and there seems to be a real, need to look out for you folk when you visit us.
Yeah, I think the answer is multifaceted. It is additionally the Kiwi hospitality. It's a great help that we speak with the same grammatical structure and words, even though we might have some kind of different meanings behind it. We speak the same language, so that really helps communication. Whereas you go to other countries, everyone's trying to be helpful, but there's more room for error.
Yeah.
There is a very kind of family and community orientated atmosphere in all the places that I visited. It kind of exists less in cities everywhere.
Yeah.
But then you can find these unique spots.
But then, aside from Auckland, our cities are kind of like towns with slightly taller buildings, really, aren't they? So
yeah, very much so. Yeah.
So when did you first come through here? Was it through your own stuff DJing, or was it through tour managing?
So, this is my 8th visit here, and I really fell in love with New Zealand by my 2nd or 3rd visit because my first visit was so brief. This is the 2nd shortest time I've been here, but my first visit was 12 days.
Yeah,
and it. Provisionally, it was to DJ my friend's wedding, his sister's wedding. I came to DJ at his sister's wedding, but he was also part of the Sandy Bay Social Club, and that was Paul who came to Brixton Hill to a night spot where we were having a birthday for my friend Matthias Lawrence, who's made remixes like myself with reggae and hip hop and he's called Upstate, and Matty was DJing, and myself and a guy called Rob from a band called Stereo MCs. We were probably bigger than both of us combined, far bigger than that.
I think we know the Stereo
and
MCs.
Then, all right, okay.
We're connected.
If you make sure you're connected, the writing's on the wall.
And then I think I can't remember how many people they were with, but certainly Paulie and Bobby came up, and they said, would you like to come to New Zealand and DJ? And this was
coming after, go back home from the wedding, come back and do a tour kind of thing.
Yeah. Do you want to come over and DJ and do my sister's wedding as well? So I was like, yeah, sure. And we came over, got thoroughly sunburnt first day, up in Sandy Bay, which is up on the way to Whangarai.
Yeah,
and then DJ'd at the wedding, looking like some inverted matchstick, with the red head. But I was all in. I had a black shirt and black trousers, really red head. They let me stay for 2 extra days in the hotel to decompress in the bath.
Well, are you actually serious? You got really fucked up
really badly. Yeah, I literally
bits of you coming off on the pillow kind of thing.
Could not leave the hotel.
Yeah,
and then went down and did Splore when it was reasonably small. It was probably about 4,000 or 5,000 people.
So, but I'm a stickler for kind of dates, also for the nerds out there. So, what would that be? Kind of early 2000s?
No, that was because Jstar didn't
Jstar
start
didn't
release
exist.
until
Yeah,
2003.
yeah,
So
2003.
I had release as Freaky Beans on the 21st Century Ska album, which came out in the 20th century
Yes.
in 1999.
We'll get to that later.
But
so when was that
so I
score?
came over to explore. That was January 2008.
That's actually the early 2000s now, when you think about it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. In some ways. So to early 2008, and then something else happened, which was also just kind of opportunity and serendipity. Is that I came back to the UK from that tour, met a booking agent who was booking a band called Shapeshifter.
Yeah,
for
Europe.
Yeah,
heard of
and
them too.
I'd met, I didn't still have all the connections right in my head because I'd gone down to DJ for Downtown Brown, Sunshine Sound System guys, and I'd gone to this shack in the hills, this really old New Zealand terms, cottage, and there was 3 guys there, and
one of them was Diggs?
One of them was P. Diggs,
Yeah.
one of them was Tiki Tane, and one of them was Stawny Pops and KP. And Tiki, and I didn't know who any of them were. And I just went in and said, "Hey guys, nice to meet you." They were in the middle of
even wider New Zealand didn't know who all of them kind of were like they do now.
And they were making a mixtape, and then I just said, "Do you know where the wharepaku is?" And that was one of the only words I knew. Yeah, and they did that.
Priorities.
They're like, "Whoa, this guy, he's paying attention."
Yeah.
And so when I was allocated the job of being their tour manager, I didn't tell them until they turned up, and they were like, "Oh, it's Jstar's our tour manager," because that's my other kind of life. And my tour management had extended to lots of other bands, bar Diplo and Major Lazer, who I was to then start working with in that same year.
So this is when Shapeshifter toured overseas. You turned up in Europe, and
I
you
became
were
their
tour
tour
manager.
manager in Europe. Yeah, putting all the plan together, and just great bunch of guys, just absolutely brilliant, great fun.
And so I don't mean in terms of whether how they'd all travelled separately before that, but were they kind of effectively fobs back then in Europe? Like were they fresh off the boat in terms of being a band? Like were you the first to take them under your tour management wing?
Well, they had been a few times before, and usually helped by a guy called Jasper, who's specific.
He's come up on this before,
and he's helped promote Aotearoa music and. In UK and Europe, and obviously there's a lot of expats out there. You can fill a great London gig, but when it comes to doing a tour, you've got to go to lots of other cities, and you're not going to get quite the amount of people who are familiar with the names of the artists.
Yeah.
And the band would often talk about this kind of colonial wall, felt that they couldn't really engage their brand of drum and bass into what has existed as a scene for years in UK. And
are you saying to me that breaking that harder mould of drum and bass, is that what you're meaning? I don't quite know what you mean.
I don't. I think that the music...
Oh, sorry, excuse me. It's insularly UK-based music.
Yeah, I don't think it was very insular because it reaches out into Europe and Russia and lots of other producers, but they were finding
But from their perspective, it was hard to break in.
That's fair, because maybe they weren't also having the backup from their label to push stuff into UK or have a representation. And when I heard them, I was like, wow, this is fantastic, the way that Tiki mixed them on the desk.
This is something that a lot of people aren't aware of, because also that Tiki became a kind of mainstream pop star here as well. And a lot of people don't even know that playing the desk, like a lot of people don't know that an audio disc can be played like a musical instrument. And I've often said to people, if you go to a Shapeshifter show, stand behind the desk and watch what Tiki's doing, because it's that Adrian Sherwood live dub experience.
He reminded me of another engineer called Mickey Mann, who used to engineer for Orbital, who were one of the first people I worked as a stage manager for. And in about 2003, I'd worked with them, and Mickey really was like the third member of Orbital. What he did with the sound and throw it around was what Tiki was doing.
Yeah.
And
stunning.
And many times
exciting.
There was only one other band, which was London Electricity, who sounded like close to the records.
Yeah.
Everything else sounded like a double tempo drum and bass time being played by a jazz band, and was mixed very flat.
Yeah.
In-house engineers wouldn't get it.
I get it. So making a live band sound like an electronic,
to make it sound as if it was
heavy
in
produced
the
record.
To give that impact.
And there weren't really, and you are much closer to the source than me, but the way I understand it is there weren't, you mentioned London Electricity, like there weren't actually a lot of bands doing live drum and bass back then. it was mainly a studio music, right?
Yeah, there was. Yeah, was it?
Like you say, there's a couple of.
There was a smattering of things.
Thin-sounding jazz bands.
Yeah, I might see bands at festivals, pertaining to do jungle tunes in there or drum and bass tracks in there.
So you spent a bit of time with because my era of being kind of close to those guys is when they were in Melbourne, and I was booking. Me and the guy running the bar I was booking for were booking them to DJ because they basically needed cash while they're in Melbourne, and they're all great DJs in their own right. So I got to know Redford really well. Did you spend time with Redford?
Yeah, Redford was actually... did he just do the first tour or the first two tours? But Redford was wonderful, very skilled, very talented man. Talks to lots of local random people. I mean, we had to kick one of the randoms out that he met. But also he'd be out for digging records and finding things with the enthusiasm that I'd missed for quite a while.
Well, his thing, just totally that lust. But then my thing when I first saw them... Because I'd seen them, but seeing them when I knew all of them, I kind of paid even more attention because they weren't nowhere near the kind of behemoth they are now. They were doing small shows in Melbourne and stuff. And I watched Redford drum, and all I could relate it to is like, when a dude in a punk band will play a tune, but punk songs are normally only about 2 minutes long. I'm like, how can you drum at that athletic pace for like an hour and a half long show or whatever? This is the punchline of this story. So I got to talking to him, and he couldn't even afford a kit while he was over there. So he wasn't even practicing. He had 2 drumsticks, and he was walking on stage to sound check, and then he was playing those shows. That was the level of skill,
Yeah, a very skilled drummer, and he's got great reggae licks, great jazz licks. But I think it did take him a toll physically. I think he had some
totally
on the muscles the way he plays.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's very unusual historically to play that frenetically and at that BPM, but not have breaks. Yeah. Because you're playing that, playing that show all the way through.
So back to the original question. So that was the first year I came over. It was 2008. I'd got this invite earlier through Upstate's birthday party, like 2 mashup guys, me and Upstate, and the Sandy Bay Social Club, Sandy Bay Beach Club, Sandy Bay Social Club, and those guys are great. With helping support and find other gigs at that time, and it was big poster campaign, and they're pretty on it. And you remember this time was the internet wasn't as prolific with the download culture, and I was making vinyl. I'd been making vinyl at that point for 5 years and pressing records, and they were all collectors, and they in the same format as the Jamaican records were coming out. Mine were in 7-inch format, so it all fitted in for
with
them.
the jukebox hole. Yeah,
and they hadn't moved we hadn't all gone into the digital area at that point. So that was 2008, and then the next year I skipped, and the year after I came to play on the Shapeshifter tour with Downtown Brown Sunshine Sound System, Tikitane and Shapeshifter, doing like 10 dates in all the pubs, that kind of thing. And
Simon's a gifted DJ, right?
Straight in, Simon, Dr. Brown.
He's a gifted
Dr.
man on the turntables.
Handel.
Yeah, doctors, mate, they're a dime a dozen. Don't you worry about that. But he's actually a useful doctor.
And I saw him for 5 minutes this weekend. Actually, I would love to caught up with him a little more.
Yeah. Anyway,
so we did this tour, hitting all these big pubs, with Shapeshifter. It's 2000 a night, and then up to New Year's, which was at the top of Coromandel. But I literally, I'm very grateful they paid for the flight and they invited me officially, and so that was absolutely wonderful because I wouldn't have made it otherwise at that time.
Yeah.
But it knocked me for 6 after doing those 10 shows. I still wasn't adjusted. Just getting adjusted to the time, banging on the shows, trying to work out what the audience would be like. Who am I being exposed to? So they said, okay, don't worry, you'll get.
Are you meaning it was like, what is New Zealand culture and crowd to play to?
Yeah, culture. What am I going to play to them?
So that's interesting. So there are differences.
Yeah. So that was 2010. Is that right? So January, and so I'm exposed to a lot of new bass music that I was getting through my connections with Diplo, Major Lazer, and new stuff, which I was wanting to try as well as my reggae stuff, and I didn't know if people knew me as a DJ or a producer, and I was hoping to play after Tiki, but in the end I played first sometimes, and that was quite hard because I was playing to people just wandering in and getting a few beers. So
And waiting for...
And I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I've come all this way. I was a bit frustrated. I was tired, frustrated. I've come all this way. What am I doing here?
Yeah.
But that was okay. You know, I got over that. That's part of just when you're adjusting your body and your mind at the same time to a new time zone, you're not quite settled there. And by the end of the gigs, it was great. And the Coromandel New Year's gig was amazing. And
Cora Gold back then
Cora
or something?
Gold, and I was able
yeah.
to play after Shapeshifter, play drum and
Yeah.
bass set as well, with Tiki and Storny emceeing as well. So
I think
that was
I was there. Yeah,
that was very pleasurable.
Yeah,
That was great.
Yeah.
Real high after that, and then the next day, I got rescued by the Raglan Boys, who I'd met.
I think you're more connected here than me, bruv.
And sent me down to Raglan for a gig, and I was like, okay, who are these chances? You know,
What do you mean
I didn't know who
chancer?
they were. They were
Yeah.
somewhere called the Yacht Club. They were all surfy, and I was very arrogantly expecting
California, like, yo, dude.
Yeah, California,
How
yo,
are you,
dude.
Gnarly.
blonde, dreadlocked, no shoes.
Yeah.
And
what's that-
actually, they were pretty organised. They were
Sublime?
dedicated followers. This town was associated with like femininity, protectiveness and nurture. There was well because of the history of the place.
Yeah.
And so it does have vibes. There are vibes there. And I stayed a week. I did the gig, and we all jumped off the bridge after into the water, and I just felt this was an amazing place to stay. And this Tony Tea House, who's down there, was from down in my locality in West London. Even he's many years older than myself, and it was great energy. I felt connected. It was like the disconnection you feel when you've flown into a place that's 12-hour time difference, and you're straight in on the stage, and you're not quite sure what's going on. Which is what you have to do internationally all the time. And the artists who have to do that and play to thousands of people, goodness me, what a skill. But it took me a while to find my comfort zone. And then Raglan was like, okay, boom. And I think I was here at that point for probably between 6 and 8 weeks. And that became my standard benchmark.
Right, so that's
to come
the thing.
here, adjust, be here quite a while, get to really feel out the people.
I was thinking, so 2 or 3 weeks is when a holiday starts to feel like it's turning into, you start to peel off those layers, you know? Look, I think if you ever want to apply for residency, I'll just save this file and you can play the last 20 minutes to the immigration people, because it sounds like you've kind of sussed what we're about.
You used to talk about peeling back
in an absolutely lovely, heartfelt way, which is exactly what I'm meaning. I'm not meaning to minimise that.
The more you visit somewhere, you do peel back the layers. I mean, you can come somewhere and think, oh, it's amazing, but that's because your life's so different.
Yeah.
And then the next time you come here, you might start to see a bit of, you scratch under the surface, you look at a bit of politics on a national level and on a microcosmic level in each town.
People also start to go from, I don't mean bullshit small talk, but small talk because you're on the first level with them. Mm-hmm. So you start to get more insight into people's lives and what makes the country tick and what's
someone
worrying
you might
them.
think is the person to get all your gigs through might not necessarily, they just talk and they might need to go somewhere else. And you might be missing spots out. So, and I investigated a few times, different people who said, "Oh, Jay, we want to put on a little tour for you," and ended up in the Whangarei ballroom where they play. Is it a ballroom in Whangarei?
Right.
And not a lot of people. I think everyone was at some other festival, and this guy, it kind of mismatched the show. But I tell you what, we had a stonking night, even though it was quite minimal.
The only awkward one is when they book you and you are really explain well what you're about and what you do, and then you get there and you're not hard house. I'm being extreme, but you know what I mean? Like I said, what I'm really interested in that you said a little bit earlier is because now you've played a bunch of countries. Is it really that distinct in terms of you saying I needed to suss what New Zealand audiences want? Or I would have thought smashing out a great set globally is fairly similar. Or is it really, you think that connecting to what each country's about is important? You'll do it a little different depending on where you are.
I tell you what, the answer I might have given you a month ago is different the answer I'm going to give you now, because
excellent.
I just went and played Soundsplash and in Raglan, 8,000 people down there.
That was a killer lineup.
I'm pretty much going up against 660. then there's another main stage where Ed Solo's about to go on, a great drum and bass jungle with reggae in it. The rain is coming down. We're on an outside stage. There's, I don't know, half a dozen people, maybe a dozen people dancing to the guy before me, who's also someone I know called Rude Cat. He puts on the Island Vibe Festival, which is great, up near Brisbane in Aussie. And I thought, I've got to go up against this. Do I have to pick music out? But I'd actually, in my mind, said, John, you're just going to play the album. You're going to do the album, expand it into a dub set. They're not going to know it. I'm not going to be trying to hook people in on anything. I'm just going to perform. And
you're just going to like put your album together on the spot with the dub album as well.
Yeah, with the dub album and some effects which I can play, like live drums and kind of plinky plonky synthy sounds, and use my sirens and just get really under the bonnet. Of it.
With something fucking intimately.
A lot more, even though those people didn't know the music.
But you do, so that's your...
And it's not a tempo-led set, which you could be doing with the Serato, going, what's in this tempo? What shall I play now? Oh, what sounds good? Rather than trying to feel the music or going, what did I play at the last gig that worked with that tempo and never that track, which is quite a common way to DJ now electronically because of the structure of the software. You forget to feel it out a bit. But I can feel it out with the album. I can really feel what was necessary at that point, and it was pretty much a 45-minute set actually, and it was solid, and the response was great. And sure, there was probably a bunch of these guys going, "Who's this guy?" and "What's this?" But they're all dancing to it, which is, and I wasn't having to think about what they might be familiar with.
I actually derailed you from what I asked last, which was, how does that relate? You said, I said, is it different New Zealand, UK, Hong Kong or wherever? So you said I would have had a different answer a month ago till now. So what's the different answer from a month ago?
Well, the different answer would be, for a straight DJ set, would be yes. I'm trying to engage a mixed audience in Germany with a mixed... Well, a reggae audience in Germany with the kind of mixed reggae that goes down very well in somewhere like Bristol, where you can play... You can lead into some drum and bass from... some other wonky bass music through some roots music and some loops. You couldn't do that. You'll have the dancehall people dancing to dancehall, and you'll have some people who are into roots like that, and it's kind of quite divided.
So let's reduce this all to small statements. Serato set, DJ set, not remixing your album or whatever. So standard DJ set. What tweaks the nipples in Germany compared to what tweaks the nipples in New Zealand?
Well, I've said 20 years of a hemp head store, which is sells bongs and tickets for events all over Germany.
In Germany,
and in Chemnitz, and I knew that what I was going to do might. The guy before me played like every mixed up quite fast in a traditional style, every classic kind of Jamaican hit.
Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah, and it's and everything. And underground ones and a bit dancehall as well, and they like that. Yeah. And I was ready with like a new Mad Professor Nadine Sutherland track, or something by the Disciples, or Blacker Mix from UK, and I said, I'm going to...
Disciples still doing stuff?
Yeah, Russ Disciple is producing some fantastic music. Yeah. And I thought, well, I'm going in here, and I unapologetically said... I'm from here. This is where I'm from. This place, UK. This is my take on the influences of reggae and for your set. By the end of it, I moved into my mashup kind of era with the hip hop, and they really liked that because it was kind of
a few familiar party tune samples.
Hip hop was very
bombastic,
big in Germany because a lot of the era, maybe slightly younger than me, they grew up with MTV, which I didn't grow up with MTV, but that would pump out. I grew up with pirate radio stations around, but there aren't pirate radio stations in Germany, and for those that grew up without the internet, they had MTV, and they had maybe Forces radio from American or British Armed Forces as well, depending where they were. And for those in the East,
so they've got American kind of R&B hip hop.
For those in the East, very little. They had very little, and the younger people would have had by the time the wall came down, they would have been exposed to the same kind of MTV stuff in the 90s. So
I really love how you factor all of this into playing a set. That's the way it should be. I don't mean to be trite, but that really is. If you're playing to the human condition and the history and whatever, that's right. You do think about all these.
So
things.
they're growing up with a take on reggae,
There's
and
psychology
stuff,
and history and
they're not being exposed to a Jamaican culture that's like literally 10 foot out of their front door. That's or subtly there, or
ne-
there
ne-
very
ne-
visually.
Neither are we, but
Yeah.
we seem to have in New Zealand this particular connection, you know. I've noticed it because when I lived in Australia, I mean, it's got stronger over there. But there's something in New Zealand that
Okay, well, I mean, you think, okay, they can't necessarily understand all the lyrics. They enjoy the music in Germany.
Who's
Whereas
this?
here,
Yeah.
whereas here, you know that the music had a political sensibility, or
Yeah.
it had a sensibility which was trying to inform the community in its own way of issues affecting the community.
Yeah.
Because it's about people often in poverty and fighting a system that seems unjust and iniquitous. You know. So, those factors come into why, and it's an island. You know, we've got island music. England's an island. It's not a very warm island. You know, we're all in.
Look out the window.
We're all in. We all live in islands run by.
We're sitting here in our bikinis, you know. Yeah.
Islands run by corrupt plutocrats. You know, that's the people who are running all those islands, and then the rest of the people are suffering. So there's a connection there, maybe.
Absolutely. And I was thinking, you know, without mapping out your whole musical history, you're a producer before I met you. The funny thing with you sitting here now is we actually just kind of, in the scheme of things, briefly met backstage at a festival where I was stage managing.
Yeah,
and we kind of hit it
Northern Bass,
off.
right?
Yeah. And then through Facebook, we've probably followed each other and so on, and yada yada yada. That mad connected world we live in. But I certainly knew your music before then, and I think based on, you know, when you hear the way someone's putting music together, obviously first up you like their music. I'd hazard a guess that very similar music, you know, turns us on. Where does this come from, man? Because the podcast isn't about telling my story, but you know, how did you get turned on to black music? And particularly, I mean, obviously, I was going to say British black music, but obviously that's because you're from there. But was it something you picked up in later life, or did you grow up around sound system culture, or?
Well, yeah, as we walk through life, there isn't
London, or where are you from?
We're not a computer which is ticking off loads of boxes. I'm being influenced by that tick. That tick. So it maybe there's a desire for otherness that happens as a teenager. I think. Well, okay.
Yeah, but that could have turned into you being a death metal.
It could have turned me into being into death metal or a goth or something like that.
Yeah.
But I had a sister, so she was already going down the darker route. Well, not with death metal, but she was into Mudhoney and bands like that. And she was into that grunge scene, and she was into The Cure and to Beatles, and I was buying
that quality unhappy white music.
Yeah. And then I was listening to instrumental dub albums, Renegade Soundwave in dub, but that was a bit later. That was 1990. I was listening Jimi Hendrix, Bob Marley, and James Brown, which sounds like the three. That's like my trilogy. Is it the trilogy? Trinity. My Trinity. Those for me. My dad had lots of 78s, but we didn't really listen to them. We listened to cassettes that he bought of that music, but he didn't listen to his 78s until I got them all, lots of them mastered for his 70th birthday. And he collected music, which was black music from the time, or 10 years before he was born in 1926. So it was music very early on recorded on phonograph, and then through the 1920s and 30s.
So your dad was quite old when he had you?
Yeah, and he was listening...
Well, not quite old, but older than the typical dad of that era.
47.
Yeah.
But he's collected like lots of Louis Armstrong, Hot Five, Bessie Smith, very emotional music, and then he got into Dixieland and trad jazz, which was popular before the beatniks and before the rock and rollers in UK. There was a whole scene. So that was certainly there. I was in school, we call state school, like normal government run school in West London, which was very mixed with Bangladeshi because of the floods which had happened. So we had a lot of refugees came through, West Indian, Jamaican, Caribbean, Spanish, Hungarian, Italian, everything. Because you're in the middle of London with it, and North Arabic, Morocco, because there's a lot of Moroccan kids who come through from an agreement in the 1970s for families to come as additional workers to the UK. So when talk about immigration problems, we always ask other countries for people to come and work in the UK because people didn't want to get off the dole. So it was a mixed up culture, and when I got in, and then discovering pirate radio stations, and I had friends who were much more into hip hop and listening to LWR, which was local London Weekend Radio, which is a pirate station mostly with hip hop. And then I'd also find the emerging pre-jungle hardcore. Yeah, because there was jungle music and
so you're a little bit older than
exist.
me. I'm 40 now. What are you?
Yeah, 3 more years older.
3 more years. So. Yeah.
And
that gives you that little. Yeah, I can see where you are now exactly in the scheme.
There was the Department of Trade and Industry were coming up with an act which was about to stop the pirate stations. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to try and regulate the bandwidth, and they were claiming that emergency services couldn't get through if they were. But generally, I think that the radio stations kept off those frequencies.
Yeah.
So there's like Power Jam, Station FM, Unique FM, Roots FM, all things that I could pick up quite easily. And Touchdown, which was the one that had people like Navigator on, and all the pre-drum and bass guys.
Yeah.
Collectively, that the ability to, without having much spare cash in my pocket, the ability to get records from the library. That was very important.
That was the same here. Wellington Public Library had this killer record collection that schooled me up from like, I've heard of Husker Du, I'll take it home, I'll listen to it, I go, yeah, I understand that, but it's not really my thing. I'll bring this home, I'll bring that home. Yeah. You know?
So you didn't have to go and buy them, and you didn't have to...
Because you got this X amount of money, so you suss it all out before you go and make that really crucial purchase.
And you're spending, pennies at a time, and you can... So I think I had Zunga Zeng out for like 2 months and kept renewing it.
Yellowman.
Yeah, Yellowman.
Oh man, I bought that and sold that. That was a silly 12 to sell.
There was a Yellowman and Fathead album.
Silly
there
12.
was Charlie Chaplin. There was Alpha Blondie. And there was Revolutionaries. So I got those out. And at the same time, within a couple of years, a guy in my street called Bart Smith.
I love the way you remember those things, eh?
Yeah, Bart
What's
Smith.
What's his name? Bart? Yeah. What's he doing now?
Well, I have no idea what he's doing now. I know he married a Greek girl and I DJ'd at the wedding. There's a bit of plate smashing involved. But he... and I also bought... I bought an SH-101 off him. He ran a shop, a thrift store, second-hand electrical stuff. He'd get really good stuff.
Yeah.
And I bought the Synthitom, which is the same as Josh Acker has as well from his store. But he, at that time, was working Record and Tape Exchange, which was... exactly what it says on the tin.
Yeah, we know.
Tape
Yeah.
records and
I
tapes.
I
don't think now you could take tapes in anymore.
No, it's called. It's called. When I was there, I think it was called. I must have updated their name. I think they were the Record and Video Exchange.
Yes, so
Kyan was working there when I was over there.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And they had
now it's the MP3 and streaming exchange.
Well, they got an empire of 5 or 6 shops in Notting Hill, and they also do books.
No, I know.
Fashion and jewellery.
Yeah.
But that time. Bart was really helpful. I didn't want to do anything under the counter. Well, it was under the counter, obviously. Yeah. But he would give me a big sack of records. I'd go in there, find a load of records, and he'd let me take them back. And then I could buy what I wanted and return the rest. I wasn't going to just keep them and go, I like this.
I think the statute of limitations is fine here. But
I would take them back in, and having chosen and I was getting into would be everything from acid house, new kind of funk productions, and anything with reggae in it. I mean,
so it sounds like we're early 90s here.
Early 90s. So from 89, 90.
Yeah.
Basically.
So you were probably sounds like just.
So there isn't a direct answer to why I'm influenced by all that music, but certainly that was what was hooking me in, and the otherness, the desire for otherness, as teenagers have often. Yeah. And I tried every other.
No, you did answer it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think I probably had once tried marijuana many years ago. That might have had an effect.
You tried marijuana once.
Yeah.
The Huhana.
Yeah, but obviously I did. I exhaled.
Had a funky jazz cigarette and ended up in Brixton. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that? You just made me lose my train of thought with that. That'll happen.
Choo-choo.
You see, you only smoke it once, and then that happens. So it sounds like you were just a little bit young to actually be out in that summer of love, and you were kind of at the tail end of it with all the music bubbling on around.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what would have happened if I'd been a bit older. I think there was a lot of people really capitalised on that, and I was just not kind of ready.
Yeah. I also wonder whether there's a whole... Because it was so widespread, aside from the real heads music-wise, I wonder whether there's a whole sort of part of a generation in the UK, late 40s to late 50s, that's brains are fried now. Looking at it from the most pragmatic, healthy end of it.
They did talk about that. I mean, there was some fear at the time. The great fear. Who knows how?
There's some hilarious footage.
It was either going to be the beef crisis with everyone's brains being fried now. We'll have like millions of people like brain dead in beds, or it was going to be depression from ecstasy intake.
Well, I don't know how if you learn, because when I first took ecstasy, like that empathy buzz, again, to sound trite, it's the truth. It really changed my perspective outside of being on that drug. It actually really kind of changed how I view the world. It's the one kind of substance I'm quite an advocate of. So I wonder with all that empathy that was learned, how the fuck far right governments are still being voted in everywhere. You think that crowd slightly older than you in the UK would.
It was less. It was less impure then. That's what I'd say, and so therefore I think it had more of an effect. But there's very little ecstasy in the pills now, so maybe
no. But you missed what I'm saying. I was trying to say that I would hope that you carry that through life. Yeah. So all these people are voting in their
there would be a longevity.
40s and 50s. We'll just anyway. So the Jstar thing, did that? I'm just trying to draw the two stories together. Did that come about from being, in terms of the Jstar that kind of tours the world now, did that come about from being invited out to New Zealand and going, shit, I can do this? Or were you already kind of a touring DJ, as it were?
No, I'd already started touring. I mean, I'd already been a DJ for years.
Yeah.
And I'd start from this point of getting all these records at Record and Tape Exchange. Yeah. Then I went to what was called a college, though. They did give me a university accredited certification.
Yeah. I've got that written down somewhere here.
There I learned really to
film, radio and TV studies.
Yeah, learned to cut my chops DJing and putting on. I thought, okay, there's a load of people doing house, there's people doing techno, right? Okay, I'm going to do the reggae stuff. This is what I'm into. I'm going to do some reggae and freeform and trip hop nights and whatever in that town, and that was quite successful. I still carried on DJing when I came back to London. When my other friends in London I was already DJing with before I went to college, but it was very localised in West London. It was house parties and squats and events where you could play just about anything and everyone would just get on. There was no expectations. So I continued to DJ, and I joined a band who wanted a slight, not an electronic edge, but they wanted to add some samples, and I had some analog keyboards, and I had the sampler, so I would...
The era of the crossover started to happen.
The crossover, definitely, kind of post-trip-hop. If you think about maybe kind of Primal Scream, that kind of stuff.
I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you, bro.
So I joined them, and that was marginally successful. Great record deal, and I was allowed...
Cool?
They were called Coot.
Yeah.
And we toured, we supported Moby, and we did a couple of gigs with Cypress Hill.
Yeah.
And we went around with a guy called Andreas Johnson from Norway, who had a big hit that hit English radio stations. But for some reason, this was in 98, 99, 2000, and it was about the time that the larger record companies were struggling with the acts that they were using. We didn't get dropped. Yeah. Simply Red got dropped. Lots of other bands got dropped. We got bought out of our contracts because they hadn't picked up on the options. Not me personally. I was on a kind of retainer for the band. But it was a great experience to do touring and to start to look at the machinations of a record company, which I didn't understand what they did with our music. And then we had someone called a product manager. So we're obviously a product. And where does that go on the conveyor belt? That made me think of factories and machines which go hiss and clank and pop. And
you're not far off.
So I for whatever multiple reasons, I was making these kind of remixes and mashups because I didn't have any dub plates and I wanted something special. And they were like putting together things I already was mixing, but being able to get all the keys tuned in right that you couldn't do just with a turntable.
Right, I get it. So pre what we have now, you were aware of technological restraints when DJing and putting these things together before you went out, so that your sets could go to another level because you had. Yeah. Am I on the right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, but I would have to ask for some kind of CD player to play the track because I'd not be able to press it on vinyl. But then I thought, within those first few months of making those, why don't you put it on vinyl for some friends? You know, let's make 250 records, and I was not cash rich, wasn't fluid.
Hang on, so don't be humble here. Do you think that you doing that is in some way responsible for that reggae hip hop mashup thing that really blew up in the early 2000s?
I think there were other people doing it in America. You think about Funk Dubious, more Born Jamaicans.
But that's them doing actual tunes. But that mashup thing became a real DJ thing early. Mid 2000s.
Okay, there's some people that say, someone said you're the granddad of reggae hip hop mashup, and I was
Grandmaster Mash.
Be the Grandmaster or an uncle or something.
Grandmaster Mash, mate. Jstar's over.
So but actually, Upstate was doing it at the same time as me. We had simultaneously had the same idea. So and very much so, I looked at his records before I'd put one out and said, I'm going to do a better one than that. Yeah. He's put too many out.
It's one of those styles where there's such a chasm between the wheat and the chaff because it's so easy to knock an a cappella over a classic hip-hop beat or a dancehall beat, right? So
and at that time, there was quite a lot of a cappellas available through the vinyl that was around. Because I
remember the first time I realised I could download them off the internet. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
This is a whole new world!
Yeah. That happened.
Yeah.
Then, I mean, I think, there's different factors. That's probably one of the factors that helped spawn more of those things happening. Someone was releasing reggae acapellas on 12-inch of different reggae tracks, sometimes not completely clean. And then there was all the old hip hop records which came with acapellas. So the material was out there. I started doing this. I thought I'll just do a few of these for radio and people I know. And
around 0203 here?
Yeah, and I'll flog a few to the local shops. And I'm sure someone will buy this.
Went better than you expected, like represses?
Went worse than expected. I would sit at home, the guy would say, I've sent them in a cab. But he hadn't sent them in a cab. They weren't even off the press, or were they even finished? And then they turned up with the same two copies of the B-side, no A-side, or the first run of them I actually took out and there was a jump in it and a skip in it, and I thought it was my needle and I put it down to something. I realised I had to be a lot more disciplined and thinking. Don't people
this is I know you're totally talking about the learning curve. I know I'm a outside observer here from things I've heard. Don't then people actually go into when it's being first press to the dub? Don't you, to avoid all of that? Don't you go
first what happens is on the lathe, the guy looks at it with a fine eyepiece, looks at the grooves, the needle should sit in it, right? And then when they play it back, they go into a little room and listen to it and play it back. And actually, it's saying that my last records actually were all. This has all been a bit late coming because it should have been out earlier last year. They were pressed. They arrived. Thought fantastic. It arrived on time. Paid up, brilliant, never happened before. Went to play the records. They sounded like they were all pitched down.
Oh no!
And what he'd cut the session, my
music
was
still happening now.
My music was recorded at 48,000 kilohertz sessions, and they'd pressed it. And he knew the music, and he had reference files as MP3s and everything. And they'd done the session at 44.1, which puts things at about -8 on the turntable speed. So they all look great, and the production was fine, but they were already slow. So then I had to wait.
I feel so bad for you just sitting here hearing about it
for months. And
so why is it happening now in a market where boutique vinyl pressing is like? You think they'd have their shit together to have it worked out?
Yeah, I don't know. Look, we're human. Sometimes we have errors. Yeah. I don't know. I thought maybe he sent someone else in he'd put the mastering set up and sent someone in to press the button in the morning to cut it on the lathe.
So what I've heard in the past of people going and like what's his name, Simon, back in the day with drum and bass and jungle records, the idea of the producer being there in the room and seeing it all happen is not really a thing. They just get off and do their business and get it back to you.
I attended masterings. Usually cost more, because it means they have to make an appointment. And but I attended nearly all my masterings
after that initial experience.
At the beginning, but recently I've not attended the masterings.
I can tell
and they've been a part of that one. But
so what do they? What do they do? Bin those and make them again?
But that was partly because the mastering was hundreds and hundreds of miles away when I was in London, and I'm still partly in London. But it wasn't possible to be there. And then the
No, totally.
album mastering wasn't probably all done on the same day, but the album mastering is phenomenal. It's phenomenally good. It probably wouldn't have been that good had I been sitting in the room.
Genuine love. That's what we need.
Manasseh and I
Because I wanted to talk about that, because that's like a hero name to me. That
Yeah, me
he'd
too.
produced your record.
Me too, because
Even the footage I've seen of his studio is like, oh my god.
ever since he did Manasseh Meets the Equalizer came out in Acid Jazz in 1994,
Yeah.
which was a difficult period for reggae. Like Steppers was coming out, but he wasn't doing Steppers. He had his own sound.
Yeah.
He was a young producer who has also been very active in the reggae scene, running a club at Subterranea on Wednesdays with David Rodigan.
Yeah.
He was there at the right place at the right time, producing lots of music. And I'd always had in my mind that I wanted to at one point collaborate with him. And
But I thought my understanding was he actually produced that whole last album. No, if I got that wrong.
So I produced the album.
Of course, producing is a term that means different things in different contexts. Obviously, you made the beats.
The beats, the recordings,
we
we recorded the trombones, vocals, lots of different countries. And I pretty much got it to where I want it to sound. And then I'd go to Nick's and we'd separate out all the tracks onto the desk. We'd just re-EQ, clean things up. And then we'd look at it from an overall perspective of should we take some things out, add some new things in. Rarely did we add things in. We mostly took things out. Maybe some
Less is more.
Yeah, but I did go there in mind to record some percussion. And when he had some session musicians in, I said, "Can you do something for another track?" But actually, that material is for the next album.
Yeah.
So we produced an album which was wonderfully high standard before mastering. Now the mastering is for the very competitive digital market, so it should sound loud, but without this what we call brick wall compression, and it should have dynamic content.
I'm really interested in this, and put it in layman terms for listeners, because we all talk about this MP3, CD, vinyl.
But MP3, okay, we all know you've got a volume level on your iTunes, but you're not going to go and press it every time you want to hear a track different.
No, most people just have it on
track,
10 or 8 or whatever and leave it.
So each track should sound comparatively loud next to each other.
Yeah.
But when you start to make tracks loud, then what happens is you lose the dynamic quality. So if you were to make a symphony loud, then all those little quiet bits with the flutes going on would be really loud flutes, and then the other bit would be really loud, and you would never really find out what was the
dynamics. Yeah.
So Graham Dres Durham is someone I wanted a couple of different people to master it. And okay, this might seem really boring to some people, saying, "Oh, why is it important?" But I want to make this record sound as good as possible.
Yeah.
But the mastering engineer, he's the fairy dust man on the top, and he's going to glue everything a bit together. There's going to be a coherency to a whole album if he's mastering it, because he's got a particular sound. Like I've got 2 tracks on the album produced at different studios from Manasseh, and they don't sound out of place at all because the mastering engineer has put his signature on it.
There's so much to it to do it properly.
It's very subtle.
Yeah.
But I really noticed a difference, and the album doesn't feel like super traditional reggae album.
Yeah.
Because he mastered Uprising, Bob Marley. He mastered Grace Jones albums, Tom Tom Club. He mastered Sly and Robbie albums. He also mastered Unforgettable Fire by U2.
Wow.
So
this is the last, again, sort of for everyone. This is the last dude after Manasseh. After you, this is the guy mastering.
The guy who mastered the record. So I make the record. We mix it at Manasseh.
Yeah.
Manasseh has his amazing touch and his reverb returns on top of my stuff as well.
Google his studio, folks. Go and have a look.
Yeah,
watch some. Yeah.
And then Graham does the mastering on the top. And I chose him. I wanted to go all out on this album. I thought, well, what if this is the last album I do? What if
isn't it the only full-length album you've done? You've done all 12s and 7s and stuff so far.
There's over maybe 120, 30 tracks I've done. This is 23, 24, 20, no, 23, 24, 25, 26. So that's the releases, my 24th, 25th, 26th Jstar releases on Jstar label. Yeah. But I've done other tracks for other people on there.
I love how I'm like, so I don't DJ so much these days. So, but there was always this and I'm sure this is not the symptom. This is the dilemma of any, hopefully all DJs are music loving DJ in any genre. Is there's a bunch of stuff you can play to a crowd that will work in most places and spaces, but then often there's a spectrum of stuff that you think's just absolutely killer that you can very, very, very seldom play out. And for me, that's really heavy roots, and I really like that kind of heaviness you've brought to that album. And I don't want to dismiss the other records by calling them party records, because they're not at all.
No,
but in comparison,
I don't understand
the
that.
party records.
They were party records. There was an aim in mind. There was like, okay,
totally. But I just want to say, like, I'm just saying that I love heavy roots music. So I think you really brought it with that record.
Yeah, this record is.
Do you call it Roots Revive? There's a bit of digi stuff.
No,
it's
because
kind
it
of
doesn't really have an itinerary. I'm not
genres,
trying to recreate, like, as some bands do very successfully, a Jamaican kind of sound.
Heavy can mean many different things in reggae. It's quite often a spatial thing. It's a bass thing. But with that thing, it's like that. It's that sorrow that you can't bring often to a set of people having a good time.
There's something quite UK about it. I go back to thinking about Aswad and some of Dennis Bovel's productions.
Yeah.
Not that I'm anywhere even close, but like My Truth as well. That's got that up-tempo, but a melancholic song. But it's also, the song's very positive about finding someone who's just as fucked up as you are, really.
Never met anyone like you. My shy guy, so sure I was the one.
Yeah.
And saying...
That's my life quest.
Yeah. And saying, I'd travel 1,000 miles to be here now with you, you know. That's...
And so all this kind of singers and players, as it were, looking at the list, it's a bunch of people that you've met on your travels. Was there other people you sort of had to, beg, borrow, and steal to get to? Like, for everyone listening, there's basically a different vocalist on most cuts, right? I think Spikey does too, and so on. So were those connections immediate, or did you have to go and beg for some people?
Because the album took so long, because the album, it took a while to do. Yeah, I was able to work on tracks backwards and forwards over quite a long time, luckily. So I'd never met Mouse FX, who's the guy from Hong Kong. Yeah, sings in Cantonese.
First, I was going to ask about that. I never even knew there was Cantonese dancehall. You know.
都是將你污染需要醒覺掙扎，一次一次嘅封殺，逼你改變風格。邊個准你改變山與海在糟蹋？早已經過多次一片海在洗刷，每一次都有因有果有咁嘅解碼，一切皆眾生對分對等嘅資格，開滿草與花亂，我不再歡夾，身生裏轉化乜意思在爭？可否俾啲反應？可否俾啲反應？
Yeah, there's a scene. I mean, I didn't really know either. There's two languages spoken in Hong Kong. It's not Mandarin. There's Cantonese and another one. I have to look it up. And so there's a very small scene. I wanted something different. And Tomawok, who's from France, raps in also Spanish and English, and he approached me because he wanted to do a track on my Balkan reggae. And he wanted me to recut it and make an instrumental version, which I'd already done and put Nas on as a mashup. Yeah. And I said, look, I'm going to remake the track just for you, with new arrangements and license the sample and make it all official if you're enjoying that. So he delivered something, and I'd met Tom Walk at gigs after I'd done the track. So he just had approached me through SoundCloud. Rankin Joe I've not met, but
that's one of the heavyweight names I saw on the album. I'm like, how did you get Rankin Joe?
Yeah, we've had a lot of chats. I mean, I found out that he's been in Raglan. You know, he came over here with Hugh Brown and would have been Blood and Fire years ago. Rankin Joe was passing through Switzerland quite a lot, and I just got on the phone to him.
That's where Perry is, isn't it? Yeah. So is that why?
No, through a guy called Little Lion. Right. So I spoke to Joe a couple of times about the track and what I wanted, the ideas for it, which is not at all what he did.
Bad boy step in and this and bad boy step in.
Rude boy step in and this a rude boy step in. Oh, bad boy step in and this and bad boy step in. Oh, rude boy step in and this a rude boy step in.
But it's still great. And it was recorded at Lion Dub Studio in New York. And Lion Dub also does great productions from drum and bass to kind of hard proto dubstep to really nice roots.
My ears pricked up before because now you're on the map with releases and stuff. If you go and slap down a Nas vocal on a tune, does it ever come back to you in terms of licensing? Like, what are people's... Because there's that sort of infamous De La Soul... You know, there's infamous kind of test cases in the late 80s and early 90s. Do big artists kind of care so much now, or do they just realise it's part of the process and it's kind of good for them?
You know those CIA documents they released for the big black marker pen?
Yeah.
That's this conversation right now.
Oh, okay. I'll edit it out later on.
No, you can keep that bit in.
Oh, really?
That's my quote.
Okay, good.
But
I was like, oh shit,
okay,
there goes all the vibes.
Well, I can't prove it, but I've had vocals handed to me for tracks that I've released directly from the record company.
Yeah.
To the appearance of a mashup, but it is a mashup, but it's not licenses anyway. But it's helped to boost their artists. And other ones, no, thankfully,
So it's good. You're helping keep Nas on the map, bro.
But Nas has no trouble whatsoever, and that you know, okay, it doesn't matter whether I'm handing it out for free or whatever.
Did you see the doco?
Doco, yeah, the Nas doco is amazing,
Killer.
Absolutely brilliant.
Cinematography's nuts.
Yeah,
I went and saw it they had it at the festival here. I was like, what a stunning,
very emotional actually as well.
Dude, the whole thing was like, and it just. Did you see it on the big screen?
No, I didn't see it.
It was like, it was just so stunningly shot, and oh man. I'm thinking about that. I'm glad I went and saw it that way.
But I mean, my material was released for DJs on a limited basis.
Yeah,
to be delivered
for
mostly
promo
to
use
radio
only.
DJs. Yeah, and if other people did obtain
and I jest, but you do that. Like, you know, I remember you saying join the mailing list and so on. And I was getting killer records from you for my radio show. That's what I was playing them for. You know, we're nearly at an hour. 20 minutes to go on the wind down. I want to get some fun stories of touring on the road. Maybe we'll go a little boffiny for some people about kind of the intricacies of reggae record production. Touring for Major Lazer and Diplo. How'd that come about?
Well, I mean, first of all, I've been DJ. First of all, I've been tour managing for a number of years.
Yeah.
Anyway. And I got into that off the back of the band that I was in. So I went in one way musically, which was control from A to Z on what happens with records. And so let's get a record out and see how this goes. And that's kind of a desire just to see the function of things. And then the management we were on said, John, can you look after one of our bands at that time? I said, I don't know anything about accounting for the shows, but I'd already done quite a lot of tech work as a technician for audio and video, and I knew live event
industries. So you knew the on the ground stuff, but you didn't know the pencil stuff.
Yeah, and I'd also obviously been in bands and done gigs, and I'd been on the other side of it being a technician. So I'd been to festivals, I'd worked at them, and I'd worked for Orbital at that time, and so I asked their tour manager Andy James in about 2003, can you help me put me some ideas and what do I need, what's going to help? And funny enough, I've just been working for Andy James again, and I've been tour managing Square Pusher. This is like 14 years later. Random call. Can you speak to this guy called Andy?
He's kind of had a revival lately. Anyway, so
fantastic musician. So that all went through. I started doing a band called Automato from New York, who are on DFA, who are like a kind of hip hop group with live instruments, and they're absolutely awesome.
Automato,
and then or Automato or Automato.
You say Automato, I say Automato.
Let's call the whole thing off. And they're lyrics born of Lifesavers, who are all on DJ Shadow's Quantum projects. Or Epitaph. And then went on to Grandmaster Flash.
You were touring him? Tour managing him?
Just for UK, which would be kind of like 10-date runs. And Money Mark.
Yeah.
From the Beastie Boys. It was absolutely brilliant. And I just
stunning.
finally got rid of his broken amplifier on eBay that I've had in my house for like 8 years.
Yeah.
But he was great fun.
How was Flash to hang out with? Well, not hang out with, you're working, but how was Flash on the road?
Well, he knew what he wanted, that's for sure. And after the first gig, he was like, everyone in my hotel room now. Because we were due on stage and we had to wait for Jerry the Damager, and the promoter wasn't telling us he was 20 minutes late, and we were standing in a room between some fire doors waiting. And Flash his comfort zone is to just come in to the show, having done the sound check, chilled out at the hotel. Then he's fired up, come to the show within 5 minutes on the turntables. Yeah, no fucking about.
Oh, he doesn't like to come and mingle and whatever. He's just in there.
No, I mean, because he's focused, and because lots of artists get nervous, and so despite everything you can have on a rider, when it's discussed, it's a lot clearer. So then once I knew that, and to keep him warm in the van and that kind of thing, he was great, and he was very humorous.
Yeah.
And he liked to go to thrift stores, and he liked new technology. He wanted to engage in things. He felt sometimes he was a bit behind and left out. He wanted to start his own digital music software program, but there was already tracks with Serato existing, coming through. He was adamant he wasn't going to go digitally for performance, but obviously he went to use Tractor and has engaged with it, but his vinyl shows were always great fun, except that we had to take 7 boxes of records around and a mixer and the bags all in the van, and that would be at the promoter's expense, so you might have to pay an extra $1,000 on your shipping.
I've thought about that, like if you're, and I'm preaching to the choir here, I'm sure you thought about this as well, it's like back in the day everyone had to do that with a whole band, so really paying for 6 or 7 wee crates of records isn't like touring.
The thing is, we only
bass guitar, a couple of guitars, drums.
We only ever played out of 2 crates.
Well, you need to have that emotional. You need to have that security behind you. Whereas with Scruffy, he'd actually been through all those 7 or 8 bins that he takes around with him. Yeah. So how did we get to Major Lazer and Diplo?
So that was, and there went Square Pusher and an agent who was an assistant to one of the agents I'd previously worked with, said she was starting work at a different agency, and Diplo was one of the acts, and Major Lazer just had this album out. It's quite underground, their first album. And
what was that called again?
They'd gone to a festival, and their previous tour manager, who'd been allocated to them, had at one point I think got into some kind of physical fight and disagreement with Diplo, and was also saying, well, what, they have DJs at festivals? He was very much a rock and roll tour manager, and for that reason, Diplo's like, let's have someone else. Have you got anyone else? And working for
they had a guy angry that his band didn't make it in the 80s.
So working for this assistant lady called Belinda, she said, John, I know that you've recently... I've done a lot of work for her boss before, and I've just done a particularly difficult band, called Yo Majesty, and they were unsigned, never been out of America, had no tour budget, were potentially going to get signed by Domino Records, and I don't know why I did this. I said I'd fund the tour. I funded the tour. I didn't even know them.
Yo Majesty.
But on condition, when I discussed with Domino Records that they were at least in the 70% chance they'd get the deal, and would they pay back for the tour? And they did, thankfully, great. And it was quite difficult because they didn't arrive until the second gig. Except the DJ arrived for the first gig. And they were delayed by numerous acts of God. I mean, literally, they really believed those were acts of God. And the third member of the band said, this is an act of God. It means that we shouldn't be going on tour. And she quit the band.
So you signed an unknown Christian band in the hope that they'd... You funded a unknown Christian band.
Unknown Christian, lesbian, electronic, hip-hop group.
Called Yo Majesty.
Yo Majesty. That was quite a challenge, and we ended up using my old Volvo as a changing room and really trying to help them out, driving around London, and we went to Scandinavia and back into London, back out again.
Yeah.
and their bags didn't show up until about the 10th day of the tour, and one of them, it was the only picture she had of her mother ever. She didn't really know her mum, and so there was a lot of emotion there. But also, they were very strong and amazing women, considering. And the first show, I remember the venue owner saying, "Oh, everything's going to be cool. Can we make sure there's not too many drinks on stage or people?" I was like, "I'm sure it's going to be fine." The girls came up, did their thing. I went backstage. I thought, "Oh, well, it's been a bit of a hard couple of days. So I'll just get myself a little brandy and coke, and then I'll go back out the front." And it took me about 2 minutes. I went back out. The stage was full of people jumping up and down, drinks going everywhere. So I had to go put my jacket over the DJ and stop the drinks going everywhere. I thought, okay, I've got a week of this. So I think maybe Belinda thought that would put me in good stead. Obviously I delivered the tours to budget, and I knew that I was always very good at working in low budget situations.
I get what you're saying. Like you against all odds, you pulled that one off.
And then so I proceeded to do the same with Diplo and Major Lazer, except the first one we had a friend of ours, Noah Ball, his brother Noah runs the Outlook Festival in Croatia.
Wow.
As part of New Bohemia, and he said my brother's got a van who drove us down on a long journey, and unbeknownst to me, Chris is from Trinidad and really feels a cold. Chris, aka Gillionet, and he gets his face like a grumpy cat, even if he's just only mildly unhappy. It's quite frightening, and I hate his grumpy cat face, but he wears it quite a lot on tour. Because it's okay, but I think he doesn't enjoy touring thoroughly. But this was on that budget at that time was a lot harder as well.
So you kind of started tour managing them. It sounds like analogous to when you first toured Shapeshifter through Europe, like when they weren't Major Lazer like they are now.
So I think it was very lucky in the level it got to. We would rehearse. We'd book like a little studio somewhere to rehearse dancers. We'd all chip in information about things. We'd talk a lot. Even myself, I wasn't just a standby tour manager. And Diplo often would give me music. John, what does this sound like? Oh, I just got given these. Are these any good? So it was nice to have a little bit of trust. Or he'd say, I've got to do this. What's a good track to sample? Who's a good artist? They give me access to the Greensleeves catalogue. What's a good reggae track? I'd give him a bunch of names.
So I don't know.
But he's got a very good ear. He can listen.
He's got a very good ear, but he's not so connected to the roots music.
No, he's got 1,000 things to think about. And I think he's excellent at is.
But he's a reggae guy from back in the day. Like he's into that thing. Or?
He's into everything. Everything from psychedelic to house music. He's got to obscure, marginal US scenes in different towns. He's pretty encyclopedic on that stuff, and he's very good at delegating and sharing responsibilities. So if every town would go to, there'd be someone who's connected with him on an email, producing a track, and if it's a great idea. What's better for the guy in the small town? Put it out yourself, or put out a joint project that you give to Diplo and he can take credit for and give you a credit for. It's going to be the second option, right?
So a man's brief history in 30 seconds or whatever, because we all graft before we get to certain things. And so you've indicated he had a huge history. Like, what had he done leading up to Major Lazer, music-wise? Had he kind of been in bands and?
Yeah, he had the Diplo album Flow Rider, and he was putting on these parties called Holotronics, and doing lots of mixtapes, and he a very very hard working guy to get
Can you like what? I mean,
very very charismatic. He's got a great natural charisma.
What you joked to me about, and it wasn't about critiquing Major Lazer or Diplo, but I remember when I first met you. You joked about the machination of the festival show. Do you remember that? Throw beach ball, blah, 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 blah. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I don't think people know how... And they have to be. This isn't a diss, by the way. I think when you get to that level of stage production, you do need things to happen when they need to happen, right?
Yeah, there was lots...
So how does a Major Lazer show look on paper?
Well, so we did have some funky things on the rider, and some inflatables were on there. And I think... The idea in the Major Lazer show was that it would seem to get apparently crazier and crazier throughout the show. And until such point that we were given, we could get hold of massive confetti cannons and big inflatable balls for them to go over the crowd, which technically is quite, your insurance is invalidated as soon as you're over that barrier. And as long as they were aware of that.
So Steve Aoki's fucked once he gets into that raft.
And he stole that because we used to have a raft.
Yeah.
Steve Aoki can go and stick his raft, mate, because we was first. Anyway,
he didn't have a cake.
So there were several things which had happened during the show. Dancers would come in on and off and have costume changes. Yeah. We used to give the booze to the kids, and which obviously I thought it was quite unethical because they got younger and younger, the crowd. So it wasn't 18 plus.
Oh, you hand out bottles of bubbly.
Yeah, and it would be liquor and sometimes. And I was like, well, we can't do that. We absolutely can't do that. But we can have champagne. We can spray people with champagne. They're not technically drinking that. So there'll be champagne spraying. And the first shows used to have Skerritt Boy, who would come up, just do lots of crazy stuff. He was a little guy with a yellow mohawk, and he was 60 pounds, and he could jump into the crowd and do lots of stage diving and climb trees. And he'd have
he was Wee Man. He was Wee Man.
But it became a little bit of the Skerritt Boy show, and Diplo was always standing at the back, and he certainly wanted to get out there and enjoy it and make sure that someone else could be there to press play on the music. So Gillian Air could also do that. We've got Walshy Fire from Black Chinese Sound System in Miami to come and host it, which is completely different from hosting a reggae sound system, and hype it. And then do these very physical activities. So the large inflatables would come out, the confetti cannons, and I started buying these one-shot confetti cannons, and I'd get them delivered to all the hotels, places we were staying on the tour, so that they'd be there when we arrived, because you can't fly with them and things like this. And then that got expanded into large-scale confetti cannons or blasts of oxygen, CO2, kind of like they have all in the clubs in Ibiza.
I don't understand what does a blast of CO2
these
do?
Big jets of, kind of like a smoke machine, but they just blast the whole crowd
with CO2
or upwards with like a gas. Yeah.
What does that do?
Well, in the clubs in Ibiza, it comes out the ceiling and it comes down on you, and it's just a blast of coldness that comes.
But CO2 is not good. We like oxygen.
Is it something?
I don't think it's CO2.
What are they?
You're talking about? I thought you were talking about depriving people of oxygen to their brains.
No.
So that they enjoyed the show more.
Maybe that's a byproduct of the. Do you think they need to deprive?
Helium?
No, it wasn't helium.
Oxygen. Maybe they were shooting oxygen. I think they were shooting CO2.
Well, I don't know. I was hiring the ship by the bucket load, and
like those big gas canisters like you have in bars.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so did
it become like this race to make the show more and more interactive and crazy?
Yeah. So the lineup changed. It got more solid. The show just got more developed, and as a second album was being tested out with the first album, it became less of a DJ show where Diplo would go into a reggae section and literally DJ stuff with his album mixed up into mostly playing album tracks and re-edits and stuff that had been sent to them by other people, all about Major Lazer. It's a very aerobic stage show, which I could actually log minute by minute to show in my security briefing, which at one point, they didn't know I used to do the security briefing, but it was absolutely necessity. So that no one.
So security know what next nutty thing is going to happen.
Exactly, and I said, look, it's managed.
Particularly
chaos.
the dudes down the front.
I want it to look like it's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
The kids are going to think we'll even have a stage invasion. Which is the first no-no.
A completely manufactured stage invasion.
Yeah, but it would be manufactured. I want to know where they're going to come in, where they're going to go off. I don't want anyone being injured.
Yeah,
that's obviously the priority. Yeah, whether
that's
it's the
really
artists,
clever,
artists or them, and we were able to steer this thing and manufacture it. And they will obviously do something similar in the States with their other tour managers. They went through quite a few tour managers over there, but I was pretty much the only guy over here.
So why did you stop doing it? Just because your own stuff started to take priority, or
there was a combination of things. I think by that time they certainly had I hoped banked enough cash to be able to go to the next level. My partner became pregnant.
Yeah.
But that was shortly after I'd left. They established a singular production office which would do all the worldwide shows.
Yeah.
Rather than having people in Australia and in Asia, me in Europe, Middle East and Russia, and America, they would have one, and they turned it into like a war machine, dancers, wardrobe units, trucking, full stage show, so that we could take a consistent stage show out there. I had them I had built a. Not
Did you
personally,
enjoy kind of being able to just go, can we take it to this level? Can we take it to this level? Can we take it to this level?
We made a foldable Jamaican sound system which didn't have real speakers, it had molds in it, but they had one in America which did have actual magnetic cones in, so we made one that had lights in it, and we got it made in the UK to match the stuff they have started to do in America, and that was the level that we were at.
Did you? This is you're so close to the source. You can veto this one, or we can edit it out. The criticism I've heard of Major Lazer and Diplo is that it got to a point where some people feel like he was selling out Jamaican culture. Do you ever feel like that, or you just think it's pop music? It's pop music, baby.
It's pop
you
music.
seem a fairly pragmatic dude.
It's entertainment. It's pop music. It's business. If you listen to the Walshy Friars mixtapes from Major Lazer, if you've got a Kabaka Pyramid, you've got Protégé,
he's in there.
You've got all the artists because he hasn't left it, and they're doing absolutely killer versions of everything. Bumaye, Watch Out for This was huge in Jamaica, and everyone wanted to voice that. He was bringing a new angle to dancehall. Yeah, and
now I think about it, like that's had a you're right.
What other people want Jamaica?
You're right, haters. He was actually at the beginning of that international collabo thing starting in a bigger way.
Yeah. And there's another thing that I think there's people want Jamaican music to be in a certain way.
Yeah.
It may be like the past is better kind of thing. And it's not. Things are always going to change. But there might be an amazing musician who sounds like someone who was brilliant 30 or 40 years ago. But
and behind you there's a satchel. It's called the It's called the awkward satchel of segues, and the conversations are seldom awkward, but grab that bag and pull one of those out. It's the last task I've got for you.
The awkward satchel of segues.
Can you read it?
When do you dance alone? Are you trying to pick me up?
Yeah, that's
it's like a bar.
Did you notice the shutters just went down on the windows and the disco ball came down?
When do you dance alone?
Okay, here we go. I'll do it. When you dance alone, what do you dance to?
When I dance alone, I dance to reggae, jungle, tracks in my room. I think I might have danced to Joe Nama Trading, putting a tape together recently for a friend, very random tape. But quite often it will be, and I dance with my daughter to the UK punk band Toy Dolls version of Nelly the Elephant quite a lot.
Oh, Nelly the Elephant. That's a great tune.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming in. So the album is called Stand to Order. There's a second one called Dub to Order, but I think that's just a DJ-only vinyl thing.
That's on vinyl. Yeah, they're both on digital as well. Yep. Dub to Order is they're both on vinyl and they're both on digital. Except with the vinyl, you get less tracks on the main album because it's designed that it can be played loudly by DJs. And
you are John Ayres, but if people want to search for it, the artist name's Jstar. It's Jstar.
And don't get it confused with the big Indian J-Star,
who's a Bollywood, Punjabi MC.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and he did a track with Jstar and Honey Singh. And before just a glint in the milkman's eye, I was doing Jstar and Honey Brown, and you can imagine search engines got a bit confused with that. So, but I thankfully have increased my listenership thanks to him because I've got quite a few Indian chaps, and I've asked for personal appearances quite a lot in Bangalore, which I've yet to take up.
We haven't done the classic, well, not the classic, the crucial retail close. I'm always interested in this. What outlet is your most preferred for you? Sort of getting the most back from it you can. Would you like people to go to iTunes? Because most of these listeners probably won't be vinyl buyers. Yeah. So where would you like people to pick it up from?
Well, Bandcamp, if it's not too complicated. It's jstarmusic.bandcamp.com.
Oh.